Avengers Endgame has ruined the MCU, and here's two huge reasons why. But to explain the first reason, we gotta go back to the beginning of the MCU. When the MCU began, it built up a few main characters that we followed who eventually teamed up for one common goal. And this obviously at the time was a huge event to see our favorite 6 heroes team up. But as the MCU went along, obviously the cast of characters has continued to grow and grow, and it's expanded the universe. However, it was still all very contained and simple to keep up with. You would have to watch about 3, maybe 4 max MCU movies a year, and you could keep up with everything that's happening and happened to characters, what's gonna happen next with the post-credit scenes. Everything was very contained, and you had to watch maybe 12 hours of content every single year, and you knew the perfect MCU story. As much as I love the huge crossover event that is Avengers Endgame, it left the MCU in a very weird place because it got rid of 3 of the main original 6 characters that built the entire MCU, and it's left this universe struggling to find a singular story or group of characters to be built around. That's the thing about the Infinity Saga, is that it's truly the story of Iron Man. Yes, there's other main characters as well, but almost the entirety of the events rely on Iron Man. Now, in the beginning of this new multiverse saga that we're going into, there's so much of a focus on showing tons of new and old characters, putting them into every project imaginable, and there's not really a core story to connect to anymore. There's the street level heroes like Spider-Man and Hawkeye, She-Hulk, there's the multiversal aspect with Doctor Strange and probably Ant-Man, the galactic stories like Guardians and Captain Marvel, and while I'm eventually sure that these will lead into the next 2 Avengers movies somehow and combine these stories, it's just not going to feel the same as the Infinity Saga because it's also disconnected right now. And that brings me to the second problem, which is the amount of content there is right now. In Phase 4, which has introduced a ton of new characters, if you would want to keep up with all the new stories and the remaining stories from the Infinity Saga, you would have to watch 50 hours of content alone in Phase 4. The entirities of Phases 1, 2, and 3 had 49 hours of content. Now, you might be thinking you don't have to watch all the MCU shows to stay connected with the MCU, but we've already seen this not be true with Multiverse of Madness. Wanda is the main villain of the movie, and her entire motivation is based on a 6-hour series that you had to watch to understand fully. Yes, you could enjoy the movie without it, but you'd probably be wondering what she's talking about. Who are these kids? Where did any of this come from? We know Miss Marvel, who's going to show up in the Captain Marvel sequel, has 4 hours of content to learn her story. Moon Knight, an entire brand new main character, has another 5 hours of content alone. So these stories are the length of multiple MCU movies. So while the MCU continues to expand, I'm worried it's going to start feeling more shallow and hollow in the future because yes, there's tons more characters now and we are going in depth with some of these stories, but there's less of a focus on each of them now. Additionally, it can take years to see the continuation of a character story now, like with Doctor Strange. You had to wait 6 years to see the sequel to the first film, which didn't even build on the first film at all. It ended up building on WandaVision and Endgame. The MCU badly needs to find a core group of characters to surround our next story around, because while we're building up to something big, it's hard to feel as attached to this as we did with the original 6 Avengers building up to an Infinity War and Endgame through all those years. I still love the MCU and think there's some great content that's came out in Phase 4, but they need to go back to about 3 movies a year, maybe 1 or 2 series max that have a really solid focus. But hit subscribe if you enjoyed and let me know in the comments, yes or no, are you worried about the MCU post Endgame and this next multiverse saga?